Well, Vera, since we just had a 3-minute discussion because Amy could not remember how long we've been married, we met by saying hello.
One tragic night changed everything for the family behind Lizard Lick Towing. For years, America knew them as the loud, fearless crew on television who chased down trouble for a living. However, hidden behind the cameras was a chain of events so dark and disturbing it would lead to the heartbreaking death of their son. But the real tragedy would begin after authorities announced his passing wasn't a coincidence. He had been targeted. And the reason why would expose a world far removed from television. The Empire of Lizard Lick. Between 2011 and 2014, millions of Americans tuned in to watch a family from North Carolina chase down cars, dodge flying fists, and argue with people who had stopped making their loan payments. The show was called Lizard Lick Towing, and it turned a small-town repo business into a cable television phenomenon. Viewers loved the drama and the fights and the larger-than-life personalities. What they did not know was that behind the cameras, the same family that was entertaining millions was falling apart in ways that no editing room could fix. Lizard Lick Towing originally aired on True TV for 4 seasons, beginning on February 7, 2011, and ending on August 18, 2014. The show did not come from nowhere. It started as a spin-off of another True TV program called All Worked Up, which aired from 2009 to 2011 and focused on the high-stakes world of repossession. The network saw something in the raw footage from one particular towing company, and they decided to build an entire show around the people who ran it. The premise was simple. A repo team and their family dodged brawls while retrieving vehicles from people who did not want to give them up. The team repossessed property from often irate owners, and at the same time, they managed chaotic personal dynamics that were just as messy as the repossession calls. The company at the center of it all was Lizard Lick Towing and Recovery, based in the small town of Lizard Lick, North Carolina, a place whose name sounded made up but was very real. The man in charge was Ronnie Lee Shirley, Jr. He had founded the company in 1998 with a single truck, working long hours and taking whatever jobs came his way. By the time True TV came calling, he had built something substantial, a business that employed several people, and had a reputation for getting the job done no matter how angry the customer got. His wife, Amy Jane Shirley, was the vice president of the company, and she was not the kind of woman anyone expected to find behind a desk. She was a former champion powerlifter who had competed at a high level, and she was also a licensed mortician. She could lift a car and prepare a body for burial. And she did both with the same calm professionalism. The rest of the cast was just as colorful. Bobby Brantley was Ron's best friend and longtime co-worker. The story of how Bobby came to work at Lizard Lick was almost too perfect for television. Ron had towed Bobby's truck after he stopped making payments, and Bobby had worked at the company to pay off his debt. But then, he never left. There was a driver and office worker named Diane who went by the nickname Big Juicy, and a shop mechanic named Dave Eckler, who everyone called Crazy Dave. Together, they formed a crew that looked like something out of a scripted comedy, except none of it was scripted. The show was discovered almost by accident. In late August of 2008, a True TV station sent a cameraman to Lizard Lick for just one day of shooting. The network was scouting prospects, looking for interesting people and places that might work as television. They expected to find a standard repo story and move on. But after discovering that Amy Shirley was a powerlifter, a mortician, and a co-owner all at the same time, the network executives realized there was more depth to the story than they had anticipated. A True TV executive named Robin Hutt, who was in charge of the show, later said that the network really fell in love with Lizard Lick. She described the Shirleys as dynamic and entertaining characters, and she meant it as a compliment. The show produced 91 episodes over its 4 seasons, and at its peak, the ratings were impressive. On July 30th, 2012, Lizard Lick Towing drew 2.4 million viewers in a single night, a huge number for a basic cable reality show about towing. More importantly, the show ranked as the #1 entertainment program on basic cable in the 10 o'clock time slot among adults aged 18 to 49. Compared to the previous year, the show brought triple-digit growth to its time slot among key adult and male demographics. The episode that achieved those numbers had a median audience age of 38, which was 6 years younger than True TV's usual performance in the same time slot. The show was bringing in younger viewers, which made the network very happy. But all good things come to an end. Lizard Lick Towing was canceled after its 4th season, and the series finale aired on August 18, 2014. The network never gave a single reason for the cancellation, and the Shirleys moved on with their lives as best they could. The show had made them famous, at least within the niche world of reality television fans. But fame is a complicated gift, and it does not always come with a receipt. Behind the cameras, while the fights and the repossessions were playing out for millions of viewers, the Shirley family was dealing with struggles that the public never saw. The same chaotic energy that made for good television also made for a difficult home life. The same arguments that fans found entertaining were real arguments between real people who had to live with each other after the cameras stopped rolling. And somewhere in the middle of all that chaos were children. Young people who had not asked to be on television, but were part of the package anyway. The tragic story of what happened to one of those children would eventually force the world to look at Lizard Lick Towing in a completely different light. The cracks behind the cameras. For 4 seasons, viewers watched the Shirley family chase down cars and argue with angry customers, and most of them believed they were watching something real. But the truth about Lizard Lick Towing was more complicated than the network let on. Behind the scenes, the show was not exactly a documentary. It was what the industry calls scripted reality, which means the fights were real enough, but the situations were often manufactured. The cameras captured genuine emotions, but those emotions were usually provoked by producers who needed a good scene. And while the public was laughing at the drama on their screens, the Shirley family was dealing with real problems that had nothing to do with television. Viewers and critics widely acknowledged that Lizard Lick Towing was not a true reality show in the strictest sense. It featured manufactured drama and staged scenarios, and anyone who watched closely could see the seams showing. In later seasons, the show shifted away from actual repo work and moved into soap opera-style storytelling. There was a storyline where Bobby Brantley, Ron's best friend, started a rival company called Get Licked Towing. The name was obviously a play on Lizard Lick, and the rivalry was just as obviously made up for the cameras. But the actors played their parts well, and audiences kept watching. Some of the storylines were even more dramatic. One episode involved Amy going missing, and another involved one of the Shirley children wandering off in the woods. These were not real emergencies. They were plots, written and staged to keep viewers tuning in week after week. The children were not actually in danger. The searches were not actually frantic. But the show presented them as if they were real, and many fans never knew the difference. The line between reality and fiction became even harder to trace after the show ended. On October 16, 2014, just 2 months after the series finale aired, Ronnie Shirley got into a physical confrontation that left him wounded in Wendell, North Carolina, near the Lizard Lick Towing compound. The incident was not filmed. It did not appear on any episode of the show. It was a separate, real-world event, that happened after the cameras had stopped rolling. Ronnie was injured in the arm during an altercation that involved a family dispute, not a business-related repo confrontation. His injuries were serious enough to require medical attention but not life-threatening. A man named Joshua David Locklear was arrested and charged in connection with the incident. The details of what led to the altercation were never fully made public, and the family asked for privacy while they dealt with the aftermath. The incident was a wake-up call for fans who had assumed that everything about Lizard Lick towing was staged. The show had made violence look like entertainment. The fistfights and threatening gestures and near misses were presented as comedy, as something to laugh at rather than fear. But when Ronnie Shirley was injured by someone he knew, the violence was not funny anymore, and it left a scar that no camera crew could edit out. The show's drama was not entirely fake, of course. Some of it was rooted in real tensions that existed long before True TV came to town. A Season 2 storyline involved Ron's and Amy's business being threatened by a rival tow operation, and while the specific details were exaggerated for television, the underlying competition was real. After the show ended, fans debated whether a rival company could legally use a logo called Get Licked Towing, given how similar it sounded to Lizard Lick Towing. The debate missed the point. The rivalry was manufactured by the show's producers, and the legal questions were never serious. It was all part of the performance. There were moments, however, when reality broke through the script. Amy Shirley decided to return to the world of competitive weightlifting during the show's run, and that decision was documented as a genuine personal goal rather than a staged storyline. The cameras followed her as she trained and competed, and for once, what viewers saw was exactly what happened. Amy had been a champion powerlifter before the show, and getting back into the sport was important to her. The network recognized that her journey was compelling enough without any added drama, so they let the cameras roll and stayed out of the way. Those episodes stand out from the rest of the series because they feel different. The cancellation of the show itself was never fully explained. True TV did not issue a statement about why Lizard Lick Towing was ending, and the Shirleys did not publicize their side of the story. The ratings had been strong, and the show had a loyal audience, so the decision seemed strange to outsiders. But insiders knew that making a reality show is exhausting, especially when the reality being filmed is only partially true. The constant pressure to create drama, to stage conflicts, and to manufacture emergencies wears people down. By the time Season 4 wrapped, the Shirley family may have simply had enough. They went back to running their towing company without cameras following them. They tried to rebuild a normal life after years of living inside a television screen. But the cracks behind the cameras had been growing for a long time, and some of those cracks were about to split wide open. One tragic night would change everything and leave the family devastated in ways that no camera crew could ever capture. The night everything changed. For years, the Shirley family had been known for tow trucks and television cameras and the kind of drama that made people laugh. The fights on Lizard Lick Towing were loud but harmless, staged for entertainment and forgotten by the next commercial break. No one who watched the show ever thought that real violence would find the family. No one imagined that one of the Shirley children would be harmed in a parked car, surrounded by friends who could not save him. But on the night of February 17, 2022, that was exactly what happened. The young man who died was Harley Alexander Shirley. Everyone called him Alex. He was 24 years old enough to be an adult, but still young enough that his parents thought they had decades left with him. 2 days before the shooting, Alex had lost a friend named Xavier Smith, who died in a car crash. On the evening of February 17th, Alex attended a memorial event for Xavier. The gathering took place at a residence on the 1600 block of Josephine Road in Johnston County, North Carolina. It was meant to be a sad but peaceful occasion, a chance for friends to gather and remember someone taken too soon. No one at that gathering knew that before the night was over, another young person would be gone. While Alex was sitting in the back seat of a parked vehicle on the driver's side, a group of suspected gang members approached the car. What followed happened very quickly. Multiple shots were fired into the car, with most of the damage concentrated in the rear area where Alex was sitting. Prosecutors later stated that he was the intended target, indicating the attack was directed specifically at him, without regard for anyone else who might have been affected. A 20-year-old woman named Sophie Hagee was sitting next to Alex when the shooting began. She was not the intended target, just caught in the wrong place at the wrong time, beside someone who had been singled out. Sophie was hit twice in the back, leaving her with life-altering injuries. She was left permanently unable to walk, a result of a situation she had no involvement in. 3 other people were inside the vehicle at the time. Fortunately, none of them were directly struck by the gunfire. One person did suffer minor injuries, possibly from shattered glass or debris, but all 3 survived without lasting physical harm. The emotional impact, however, is far harder to measure. Witnessing such a traumatic moment is not something easily forgotten. After the shooting, the driver of the vehicle made a quick decision. They could not stay at the scene because the suspects might still be nearby. They drove approximately 3 miles north to a Sheetz gas station located at the intersection of Josephine Road and NC 42 in Garner, North Carolina. The gas station was well lit and had people coming and going. It felt safer than the dark road where the shooting had happened. When deputies arrived at the Sheetz, they found Alex Shirley deceased inside the parked car. Sophie Hagee was found injured beside him, conscious but unable to move her legs. Emergency responders rushed her to a hospital, but the damage to her spine was already done. The news of Alex's death spread quickly through Johnston County, and from there it reached the wider world of reality television fans who had watched the Shirley family on their screens for years. The comments sections on social media filled with shock and disbelief. People had seen Ronnie and Amy Shirley argue with customers and dodge fists, but they had never imagined that one of their children would meet such a devastating end. But it did happen, and the investigation that followed revealed depths of tragedy that no one had anticipated. The suspected gang members involved were already known to law enforcement, and their backgrounds began to offer clues that investigators believe may explain why Alex Shirley was targeted. But for Ronnie and Amy, those answers brought little comfort. Their son was gone, and no amount of television fame could change that. The family released a statement in the days after the tragic incident. They asked for privacy while they grieved. They thanked the community for its support. They did not answer questions about why their son had been targeted, or whether his death was connected to the show or the family business. Those questions would be answered later, in courtrooms and police reports, not in the pages of entertainment magazines. For Sophie Hagee, the night everything changed was also the night her life took a direction she never could have imagined. She was 20 years old, with her whole future ahead of her. She had not been involved in whatever feud led to Alex being targeted. She was just a friend who happened to be sitting in the wrong seat at the wrong time. Her permanent paralysis meant that every day would be a struggle. She would need a wheelchair to move. She would need help with tasks that had once been simple. The community responded with grief and anger. Candlelight vigils were held. Fundraisers were organized for Sophie's medical expenses. People who had never met the Shirley family donated money and offered prayers because they could not imagine surviving such a loss. The show had made the family seem larger than life. But in death, Alex Shirley was just a young man who had been taken too soon. The investigation continued for months. Arrests were made. Charges were filed. prosecutors built a case against the suspects who had carried out the terrible act. But no conviction could give Ronnie and Amy back their son. No sentence could make Sophie Hagee walk again. The night of February 17, 2022, had changed everything for everyone involved, and there was no going back. Ronnie Shirley, who had once been known for his loud voice and his willingness to fight, went silent. He stopped giving interviews. He stopped posting on social media. He grieved in private, surrounded by family and close friends. Amy Shirley, the former champion powerlifter who had never backed down from anything, found herself facing a challenge that no amount of physical strength could overcome. She had buried her son, something no one prepares for. The empire of Lizard Lick Towing, built on television cameras and manufactured drama, suddenly seemed very small. None of that fame had protected Alex. The family was left to pick up the pieces of a life that would never be whole again. And the question everyone wanted answered was the same. Why did this happen? What had Alex Shirley done to make someone hurt him? The answer, when it came, was more disturbing than anyone expected. The devastating aftermath. After the tragic incident, the world wanted answers. How could a young man lose his life in a parked car while attending a memorial for a friend who had already passed far too soon? Who was responsible for the terrible act? And why had Alex Shirley been targeted in the first place? The investigation that followed would take years, and the answers it produced were not comforting. They revealed a world of gang violence and retaliation that had nothing to do with reality television or tow trucks, or the family business that had made the Shirleys famous. The Johnston County District Attorney Jason Waller spoke for the community when he addressed the tragic incident. He said that such senseless acts of violence could not and would not be tolerated in their community. He extended his sympathy to Alex Shirley's family and to Sophie Hagee and her family, acknowledging that their lives had been changed forever by something that should never have happened. The Assistant District Attorney, Eric Hinderleiter, later praised Sophie Hagee for testifying courageously at the trial of one of the suspects. He noted that both Sophie's family and Alex's family had shown extraordinary resolve as the cases were prosecuted. The official answer to the question everyone was asking was simple and devastating. Yes, Alex Shirley was specifically targeted. The district attorney's office confirmed that the crime was not random. Someone had wanted him dead badly enough to recruit others to help make it happen. Sophie Hagee, by contrast, was not targeted. She was simply sitting next to the wrong person at the wrong moment, and her life was destroyed because of where she happened to be. The investigation revealed that the suspects were tied to a gang. Nathan Christopher Jackson from Garner, North Carolina, was only 16 years old at the time of the incident. Joshua Christopher Stewart from Willow Spring was 17. Both were suspected gang members, and both were charged with the crime. In total, 5 individuals were charged in connection with the investigation. 2 adults were also arrested and charged with accessory and obstruction, meaning they helped the suspects evade capture or hide evidence after the crime was committed. The legal proceedings involving the 2 teenagers stretched out over several years. Nathan Jackson, despite being only 16 at the time, was convicted of first-degree murder, attempted murder, and 2 counts of firing into a vehicle. Because he was a minor, he was not eligible for a life sentence without the possibility of parole, a penalty reserved for adults. Instead, he received life in prison with the chance to seek parole after 40 years, meaning he would be well into his late 50s before even becoming eligible for release. The judge emphasized that, given the seriousness of the offense, a substantial sentence was necessary, regardless of his age. Joshua Stewart took a different path. He pleaded guilty to second-degree murder and attempted murder on September 6, 2023. In exchange for his plea, he agreed to testify against Nathan Jackson. The strategy worked from a legal perspective. Stewart was sentenced to consecutive terms of 18 to 23 years for the crime against Alex, and nearly 12 to 15 years for the crime against Sophie. The sentences would run one after the other, meaning he would serve decades behind bars. But by pleading guilty and cooperating with prosecutors, he avoided the life sentence that Jackson received. The families of the victims sat through the trials, listening to evidence that forced them to relive the worst night of their lives. Christy Lee, Alex's mother, spoke after the verdicts were read. She said that the outcome did not bring her closure, because there is no such thing as closure when you have to bury your child. She described the heartbreaking things her family had gone through, though she did not go into detail out of respect for the legal process. She said that she still said goodnight to an empty bedroom. She still texted her son's cell phone even though she knew he would never text back. The family dog still went into his room every day, looking for him. They did not understand why he was gone. Ronnie Shirley Jr., Alex's father, took a different approach in his public statements. He said that if he left the courthouse with anything, he wanted people to know that forgiveness was necessary no matter what. He spoke about the importance of loving people even when it was hard. Those words came from a man who had just watched his son's killers be sentenced to decades in prison. He was not required to be gracious or forgiving. He chose to be anyway. Jean Hagi, Sophie's mother, used her platform to warn young people about the consequences of impulsive violence. She said that committing crimes in a split second was not worth it because people's lives were changed forever. Her daughter would never walk again. The criminals had taken that from her, and no sentence could give it back. As of 2025, Sophie Hagi remains paralyzed from the waist down. Her mother reported that she has been in pain every single day since the tragic incident. In the past year alone, Sophie has been hospitalized for 3 months. The medical complications from her injuries continue to mount, and her family continues to fight for the care she needs. She testified at Nathan Jackson's trial from her wheelchair, looking the teenager in the eye and telling him what he had taken from her. That took a kind of courage that most people never have to find. Ronnie and Amy Shirley have told reporters that they are doing what they can to move forward. They do not use phrases like getting over it or moving on, because those phrases do not apply. A parent does not get over the death of a child. A parent simply learns to carry the grief without dropping it. They have returned to work at Lizard Lick Towing, though the business feels different now. The cameras are long gone. The fame has faded. What remains is the work and the family and the empty space where Alex used to be. Nathan Jackson is incarcerated, serving his 40-year minimum sentence before he can even be considered for parole. Joshua Stewart is also incarcerated, serving his consecutive sentences. The 5th person involved in the crime has never been publicly identified, and as of December 2024, detectives were still searching for leads. The investigation remains open, though the chances of finding the last suspect diminish with each passing year. Lizard Lick Towing made the Shirleys famous, but fame did not protect them. Nothing could have protected them from what happened on that February night. All that is left now is the memory of a boy who loved his family and his friends, and the determination of a community to make sure his death was not for nothing. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more updates.